Welcome to Everyday Simple Somatics, a podcast dedicated to helping you find healing through your body's natural wisdom. I'm Dr. Christine Baker, and I'll be your host. So for those of us that have experienced grief, there are probably quite a few of us that feel like that grief has taken up residence in our body. It's like this heaviness that won't lift from our chest, or that tightness, that kind of ball rock in your throat that makes it hard to speak sometimes. Maybe you've even tried to work through your grief in different support groups or in therapy, but it feels like it's just stuck in there, almost like your body is holding on to something and it doesn't know how to release it. If that's you, I want you to know something really important. What is happening in your nervous system is really quite incredible. Your body is trying to protect you by containing the grief in some kind of way that feels manageable. Grief never feels manageable. And so your body is working overtime to complete this task that is semi-impossible, right? So even though our body is trying to do something helpful for us, as it tries to contain this uncontainable thing, we end up compressing it into such a small space in our body that there's nowhere for it to move, and grief needs movement. That feels really important. So I'm going to say it again. Grief needs movement, both in the body and in the way that we process it. And so today I'm going to teach you a practice that I actually learned from a somatic experiencing faculty member, Dr. Shade Lennon. And this has been, ever since I learned it, it's been something I've used personally when I've encountered grief in my life, and also have used it with countless clients. And it's been so helpful. And the practice is actually one of joint rotation. So this practice really helps your body remember that it has more room to hold the intensity of that grief. So this practice is not about making grief go away, because that's not how grief works. This is a practice of learning to hold that grief differently, with a little more capacity, a little more space, so that it doesn't quite feel so overwhelming. I remember Dr. Lennon saying that we want to remind our body that it has the whole container of the body to hold that which is so hard, right? So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Dr. Christine Baker. I'm a licensed professional counselor with 13 years of experience working in trauma recovery. I'm also a somatic experiencing practitioner, which just means that I am a person that believes strongly that healing comes through addressing the stuck places in the body, specifically the nervous system. And that is where this podcast comes from. My hope is that these short episodes, each labeled with a specific symptom, will offer you practical skills to build into nervous system rhythms of care that become just a part of your everyday life. And so if that sounds like something you might be interested in, or if this episode resonates with you, I'd love to invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are currently watching or listening. All of those little clicks really do help other people find this information as well, and I so appreciate it. So let's talk for a second about what is actually happening when grief gets stuck in the body. Dr. Peter Levine, who, as you guys know at this point, developed somatic experiencing, teaches us that all emotions, including grief, are meant to move through us like waves. They have a beginning, a middle, an end. But when loss happens, especially if it's sudden, overwhelming, or in some way complex, or if we didn't feel safe enough to actually express our grief when it occurred, then that wave can get frozen kind of mid-motion. And Dr. Bessel van der Kolk explains in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, that traumatic loss, and sometimes even expected loss, can overwhelm our body's capacity to process or allow that wave to move through. And when that happens, the body does something really intelligent and incredible. It compartmentalizes that grief, often contracting around it to try to contain it. So all those muscles are like, we got to keep this boxed in right here. So everything becomes really tight, right? And so you might start to notice chronic tension in your shoulder, or that perpetual lump in your throat, or maybe that heaviness in your chest that never goes anywhere. And here's what most people don't recognize is that grief is not just an emotional experience. It is a full body experience. You know, in my somatic experiencing training, there is therapists there, but there's also people from all different kinds of professions, including like massage therapists and PTs and people that are body workers, right? And one of them said to me one time, and I kind of chuckled at it, but I was like, yes, that's so true. They said, the issues are in the tissues. And so I just think that that applies here so much. Those unprocessed emotions become stored in our tissue, our muscle, our fascia. And when everything gets stuck there, triggers that kind of shutdown place, that dorsal vagal collapse, that immobilization where everything feels heavy and stuck. And again, just to say this one more time, I will say it a million times in this podcast, our nervous system is just trying to protect us with that compression. It's saying, hey, if I let all this grief out at once, it's going to overwhelm me completely. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients say to me, I'm afraid that if I start crying, I'll never stop. Kind of this belief that the grief will be like a tidal wave that'll take me out. And so the body just tucks it away. But here's the thing. When we compress grief into smaller and smaller spaces, maybe just the chest or maybe just the throat, often the gut, there's no room for it to move, to shift, to breathe, to change, to actually move through that wave, right? And so what we need to help the body do is remember that it has more space than it thinks it does. We need to remind the nervous system, you don't have to hold all this grief in one tight space. You have the whole body as a container. You have all of the support of the entire system. You have room. In the Somatic Wellness Collective, which is a learning community that I run, a student in there shared something beautiful with me. We actually have a entire month of content just on working with grief somatically. And she shared that after she went through that content and started doing some of these practices, including joint rotation, she realized that her whole body had been so tight, just like we're talking about, almost like she was trying to keep the grief from spilling out everywhere. And when she started to open up her joints, and this is the part that I thought was so beautiful, she said, it's going to make me emotional just saying it. She said it was like giving her body permission to be as big as her grief needed it to be. The grief is huge, right? And so when we open up the whole container of the body, it's like we're saying to the grief, like, yeah, you're big. Here's some more room. It's just validating it. And so I just thought that was such a beautiful way to think about what this practice is saying to your system. So let's jump in. Joint rotation. So we're going to move through the different joints in your body with gentle rotation movements. And the idea here is that joints in our body are kind of like hinges or doorways in the body. And so when we rotate them, we're kind of opening them up, right? And so now whatever, and forgive me for sounding like such a hippie here, but whatever energy is stuck, oftentimes traumatic energy is stored in the midline of our body. Now we're opening up, shoulder, elbow, wrist. Oh, now I've got my whole arm, right? That's all open. So it's like I just said a moment ago, we're saying to our nervous system, look, there's room here and here and here too. Lots of space. Even Dr. Peter Levine, he talks about how gentle movement can help complete those incomplete survival responses and allow that trapped energy to discharge. And so when we move our joints through their full range of motion, we're giving like I mentioned a moment ago, the body permission to expand, to take up more space, to remember its own capacity. So let's do this together if you're open to it. And you can do this practice sitting or standing, whatever feels most comfortable. I typically do it standing just so I can have a little bit more movement. And remember, we're not forcing anything here. This is like gentle, curious movement. Okay. And so before we start, I want to invite you to think about something sad, not your biggest grief. Absolutely not. Just something a little sad. Maybe you could think about that relative that you haven't talked to in a while that you'd like to, or the fact that all the trees are losing their leaves and so you don't have trees to orient to anymore. Just something a little bit sad, nothing too overwhelming, okay? And I want you to just notice as you think about that thing, what happens in your body. Yeah, I feel it all right here in my gut, like right in the center. There's a lot of tightening, even some jittery feeling. So just notice that. And then whenever you're ready, we can go ahead and start doing a little bit of rotation just to open up a little more space to be with that grief. Okay. So we'll start with our ankles. So if it feels okay with you and you can hold something for balance, just lift one foot up. And I want you to just do a little ankle rotation. And so maybe you can start clockwise a few times. Really notice that circular motion. And then the other way, super slow, really taking in exactly how it feels, all the muscles that help you make that circular motion. And then we're going to move up that same leg to the knee. And so how I do this one is I typically just draw a circle with my toe, and that kind of helps rotate the knee. And so 3 times clockwise, 3 times counterclockwise. You could clockwise. And you can also notice, which one feels easier to do. And then we're going to do the hip. And so I just kind of, on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. You won't be able to, obviously, on podcasts, but I just kind of lift my knee up to the front, lift it all the way up back until my knee is like kind of behind me, and then move it back through. So up, back, forward, back, forward. And now we're going to go the other way. So go to the back and then up and around, back, up and around, back, up and around. Very good. Now I want you to pause and notice, oh my gosh, that's crazy, the difference between one leg and the other. This one literally feels longer, the one that I just did the exercises with. That is nuts. Yeah, I've done this exercise so many times, and it always surprises me how powerful it is. So just to save time, I'm going to tell you to pause or just replay that last section to do the other leg. And then after you've done that, we're going to come to wrist. And so do very slow rotation. Really noticing all the muscles that help you rotate that wrist. And then go the other way. Noticing which one feels better. Very good. And then we're going to do kind of a similar thing with the elbow. We're just going to pretend like we're drawing a circle with our hand. And do clockwise first. And then the other way. This way feels definitely more clunky for me. Great. And then we're going to do a little windmill with our arm. Okay. So like up, back, forward, up, back, forward, up, back, forward, and then the other way. Down, back, forward. Notice which one feels better. Forward, down, back, forward. And then I want you to pause and just notice the difference in the two arms. I have that same sensation of this one being longer. This one also feels like it has more energy in it. So yeah, after you've done that one arm, I want to invite you to do the same thing. Pause, make sure we get the other arm in there as well. And then once you've done that, we can come to the neck. And then finally, we're just going to open up the neck a little bit. There's going to be nothing dramatic here. I know the neck is a very delicate area. So all I'm going to ask you to do is to just very slowly move to where you're looking over one shoulder. So there's a little bit of a stretch there in the neck. And then very slowly move to where you're looking over the other shoulder. And then come back to center. Very gentle movement here. And then look up at the ceiling. And then look slow, slow, slow down at the ground. So just opening that joint up a little bit. Now, once you've done your whole body, I want you to come back to this idea that we started with. The family member you miss who lives out of town, or the trees not looking the same as they normally do. And just notice what you feel inside. If there's any difference around how your body holds that sadness. Yeah, I definitely feel like it's taking up more space. And so it's not as tight in that one area. It feels like less intense because it has more room. That's what I notice inside. So just see what you notice. You might feel a little more space, a little more openness. You might notice, like me, that the grief is still there, but maybe not so compressed. Maybe it has a little more room to breathe. And just as a reminder, this practice is not about making grief disappear. Grief doesn't work that way. And honestly, we don't want it to. Grief is how we honor what we've lost, how we hold on to the love that remains when someone or something is gone. But what we do want is to be able to hold it differently, with more capacity, with more space, with more gentleness. And so I think this joint rotation practice can be used in a lot of different ways. I think it could be used as a daily practice. If you are walking through a season of grief right now, I think that could be really supportive to your nervous system to start the day that way. I think it also can be really supportive if you notice grief rising, that kind of familiar compression or knot in the throat. Just pause, remind your body of all the space it has to help hold this. And then obviously in those grief waves, like when there is tears, when there is expression of grief, doing some of that movement of the joints can really help those waves continue to move because you're moving your body. And so here's the deal, y'all. Grief held with more space and gentleness is way more bearable than grief held with tension and resistance. Your body, and this is what I have to remind myself and my clients, your body already knows how to grieve. We're just helping it remember that it has the room to do that. So thank you so much for trusting me with your grief this week and trusting me with this practice. Next week, we are actually going to talk a little bit about boundary setting for the holidays, because I know that episode will come out the day before Thanksgiving. So I want to give you guys a little bit of support as we move into dialogues with family and time spent with family and friends. So looking forward to spending that time with you. And finally, remember, your body has innate wisdom. All we have to do, learn how to listen to it, and that's what I'm here for. I'll see you next week.